Did you know that Shaco gains 80 stacks from Ludens, and if you add a Prowler's Claw, he ends up jumping across the entire board? In this video, I want to showcase fun techs you can do with artifacts in set 14. But before we get started, I just wanted to mention, making these videos is a ton of work, and if you want to see more of them in the future, then why not subscribe and help me reach my current goal of hitting 100,000 subscribers. Thank you so much for your support. Now let's find out what artifacts can do in Cyber City. First, let's start with one of the more common strategies used at the moment. Fiddlesticks is absolutely amazing with Blighting Jewel and Sniper's Focus. Fiddle hits a total of 3 units with a very fast tick rate, quickly reducing his targets to 0 magic resist. The bonus mana from Blighting doesn't really matter for Fiddle since he is mana locked, and chances are his targets won't survive for long anyway. As for Sniper's Focus, it allows him to stay safely in the backline, and since there's no range limit to his tether, he ends up with a ton of bonus damage, especially once he starts to bypass the enemy frontline. One of my personal favorite artifacts at the moment has to be the Talisman of Ascension. It's amazing on units like Mundo, Shyvana and Cho'Gath, as all of them increase their base HP, which makes them close to unkillable after the 22 seconds for the Ascension timer have passed. At least during the making of this video, a lot of melee artifacts are also performing quite well, though this is mainly Rengar's fault. He is amazing with Spectral Cutlass to take out the enemy backline right at the start, but other artifacts like Prowler's Claw or Mittens are pretty good options on him as well. Once we get to Silvermere Rengar, things finally get more interesting. It's no secret that Silvermere is arguably the best artifact for Rengar, since it offers him everything he's looking for, from bonus AD to defensive stats and CC immunity. One of the reasons Rengar is so powerful with Silvermere has to do with his ability. He jumps to the lowest HP enemy, dealing physical damage and then striking 2 times. These 2 strikes are not affected by the attack speed reduction. This is a pretty big deal because reducing the unit's attack speed to 0.5 is supposed to balance out the amazing benefits of Silvermere, and the fact that Rengar can effectively ignore this downside with every cast makes this artifact a must pick for him. Since I'm already talking about Silvermere, there is one more unit worth mentioning, Graves. Looking at the stats, it appears that Silvermere on Graves is a terrible choice, but to understand where this is coming from, we have to take a closer look at how Graves interacts with on-hit effects. Graves is a rather unique champion because his attacks have 5 projectiles that can miss if he's firing from range. This becomes quite apparent if he has infinite range from augments like scoped weapons, because you can see how his projectiles can fly across the entire board. Every 2 attacks, Graves will dash into melee range and fires 2 empowered shells, dealing slightly higher damage. However, this part of his ability is incredibly misleading because the empowered shells don't count as auto attacks and are treated as a spell instead. This has massive implications for a lot of artifacts. Let's take a look at a combo that sounds absolutely amazing in theory. Graves with Silvermere and Horizon Focus. You would think that he stuns his target 5 times with each attack, triggers Horizon Focus 5 times as well, and then proceeds to obliterate everything in his path, but the reality looks quite different. For starters, each unit can only be stunned once per attack, meaning even if all 5 projectiles hit, Horizon will only trigger once. The good news is that Graves can hit more than 1 unit with his attacks. At the start of the fight, when the enemy frontline is clumped up, he can stun 3 units and proc Horizon on all of them, so in this scenario, the combo doesn't look half bad. Unfortunately, as I mentioned before, the empowered shells from Graves don't count as attacks. They can't proc Silvermere, so his targets aren't stunned and therefore take no damage from Horizon. With Silvermere reducing his attack speed to 0.5, Graves becomes rather useless for 2 very slow attacks. Silvermere is not the only artifact that suffers from this interaction. Wit's End is able to proc 5 times with every attack, easily causing several thousand magic damage every fight. Sadly, you don't get this effect for half his auto attacks, but at least with this setup, you can lean more into attack speed speed and get rid of the empowered shells as quickly as possible. I was also curious about Lichbane, and based off what we've seen so far, it works the same. The empowered shells can't trigger the magic damage from Lichbane, so the magic damage always happens on the first attack after each cycle. Weirdly enough, if Vampiric Scepter would still be in the game, it would be a useful artifact on Graves because he often dashes into danger and is unable to use on-hit effects for half his auto attacks. As a final tip for Graves, he is quite hilarious with Fishbones. One of the biggest problems is that he dashes melee and is often stuck on the enemy tanks, but with Fishbones he will be dashing all over the place and can take out key targets in the enemy backline. If you ever want to try this yourself, then I can recommend the 410 Cypher Cashout, which grants you 2 Fishbones and 4 Reforgers. You can then pivot into an Executioner setup based around Graves and Vex, each taking 1 Fishbones to randomize their targeting. I had a ton of fun with this, and while it can be difficult to stabilize, it's absolutely hilarious when everything is coming together. If you want to try something more simple, then you might want to try out Aurora with either Trickster's Glass or Trenchcoat. The Trickster's Glass is especially easy to use because you get a second Aurora for free that is still able to swap with a unit from your bench. Even if you end up playing a comp that doesn't play her, you have plenty of other frontline options, so you should always get a pretty good value out of this artifact. As for the Trenchcoat, this artifact is a lot more difficult to use. Ever since it got nerfed in set 13, it has become one of the worst artifacts to take, since the split usually happens way too early and the copies spawn with too little HP. Aurora does have the advantage that as long as the copies have a mana item, they are able to swap in 3 units and remain safe on your bench. Another unit that was speculated to be quite good with Trenchcoat was Zac, but this is only true to an extent. While each Trenchcoat copy can spawn 2 additional Zacs, their HP is usually so low that they are easily taken out. The best solution for this problem is to give Zac 2 full mana items like Protector's Vow and Blue Buff. Since the copies get to keep the item stats, they have so much starting mana that they should at least get their cast out and provide valuable crowd control. All things considered, Zac is probably the most misunderstood legendary in set 14. You can find a lot of players flaming this unit, but they don't know that Zac has arguably the best item interactions in the entire game. The way Zac works is that most items will be an exact copy after he splits. For example, a Protector's Vow will still grant the copies the starting mana, but it doesn't grant a shield if they drop low, because the effect has already triggered before. Other items like Archangel will keep the AP gained and even continue to gather stacks if the copies stay alive long enough. This also works with other stacking items like Moguls, so in theory you could use that to farm more gold. Overall, you can expect most passive effects to work, but there are some exceptions that I will cover in the future. Also, I did mention in the past that Ionic Spark doesn't work, but that's not fully correct because the Zac copies only lose the MR reduction and enemy units will still take damage when they cast while in range. One of the more known strategies involves the support item Unstable Treasure Chest. Once the holder dies, 4 completed items are distributed among your team. This on-death effect still works with Zac clones, granting you not only a massive combat boost, but insane synergy with augments like Item Collector. The large gem technically works as well. After he splits, the damage amp from the first gem is frozen, but the new gems immediately start working and each of them can reach another 20% bonus damage as well. Sadly, this sounds stronger than it is because this effect is lost the second the copies are taken out. But the true hidden tech, arguably the most underrated combo based on Zac, involves the support item Spite. It grants a stat buff at the start of combat and stuns enemies in a 2-hex radius for 2 seconds if the holder dies. Same as the treasure chest, this on-death effect still works on the copies, but there is one more item we can add to this combo: Horizon Focus. When the unit is taken out, the 30% max health damage still applies to every unit that was stunned by Spite. I've showcased this combo in the past, calling it the super secret evil tech, using Spite, Horizon and a trench coat. Unfortunately, it was so difficult to gather all 3 components, it effectively was impossible to obtain. With Zac, this this is about to change. First of all, both Horizon and Spite are incredible items on Zac individually. Zac and his copies can proc the Horizon damage with every jump because the passive effect from Horizon is not disabled. It's never a bad idea to either put Spite or Horizon on Zac, which increases the likelihood of players obtaining the combo and gaining a massive power spike. Maybe someone lucky will even manage to obtain the trench coat as the third item and complete the most ridiculous setup of set 14. I hope this video gave you some ideas for something fun to chase. While it has become more difficult to reach specific artifacts, now if you hit the perfect setup, it's more satisfying than ever. Some of the combos running around are absolutely hilarious, and while it might not be the optimal way to climb, at least you end up with a game worth remembering. I hope you learned something and see you next time.